right, and we are back with another games of the week. Playoff is here. Bill is here. How are you doing, sir?
Good, Mook. Good to see you.
Nice to see you as well. It was a pretty good ending to the regular season with some of the games last week. The Kippen Manchester Essex game was a really good football game. That was like a high
Yeah,
power game. That was the best game I watched last week. Very entertaining. Very entertaining.
another game too was the Salem Peabody game. Was a tight game right to the end as well. I
Yeah.
wasn't at either one of those games, but but I've seen both. Some of these teams, but yeah, I mean, a couple of great games to end the regular season. Salem with a actually they closed out the season with some exciting games at the end, and they lost a couple of them,
Yeah.
but they played a tough schedule and didn't hurt them too much, I guess, in those seedings because they got that number 3 seed in D6, so could have been worse for them.
Yeah, everything it all came down to one possession in their
Yeah.
last 3 games, which was it shows the signs of a tough team. They opened up their first round matchup against Dennis Yarmouth, which is a team out in the Cape, the 14 seed. And I always find when teams that got to travel that far for a game, it's always tough for them when they get to the game. It takes a while for them to get going, and yeah, I've not seen Dennis Yarmouth, but the way Salem plays, they could wear you out, and they could physically wear you out. So, not too familiar with Dennis Yarmouth, but taking that drive and having to play a game against a physical team like that, it might take its toll.
The other thing too, Salem has had that kind of rocky road the last 3 weeks, if you will, success and a couple of losses tagged in there, but very close losses as you just mentioned. But this is a team that, with this current playoff system, as long as you're trying to play your best football right now, you're in business. And I am kind of convinced that Salem will be playing their best football right now because they've been tested and they played the best. They take D2 Peabody, an undefeated team right to the wire last week. So this team is playing great football, and they know. And the other thing too about this Dennis Yarmouth team, I don't know this for a fact, but you mentioned 14th seed, but they're 6-2. So that means that the 14th seed at 6-2, they have one of the down at the bottom there, if you will, of the seedings. They have one of the better records, which is telling me they're probably playing a weak schedule, a weaker schedule. And that happens. And that's part of and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking that they may not have faced teams like Salem too many times during the season. So again, maybe bodes well for Salem. And as we were talking about before we started, the winner of that game, Salem-Dennis Yarmouth, goes on to play the winner of St. Mary's Cardinal Spellman. And St. Mary's beat Spellman, I believe you mentioned earlier this year in that earlier matchup in the Catholic Central League.
Yeah, definitely. And I just brought up Dennis Yarmouth's schedule. The 2 games they lost, they gave up 50 points in one game, and they gave up 56 points in another game. So there's that, and they're kind of up and down with the scoring. They've got games. Their season high is 38 points, and their season low is 6 points. They've scored under 10 points 3 times in this regular season. So yeah, they're kind of, as you said, they're kind of up and down, and we'll see, because you have to score against Salem. Well, that's one thing we know. You have to score against Salem because they're definitely going to put up points. So Dennis Yarmouth, they need to be ready to play, and they need to get touchdowns, because if they don't, they might give up another 56 points. And we've seen Salem, they put 50 on a team this year. They put 48 on a team. So
the other thing too with these divisions, I'll call them the lower divisions, but they're the higher numbers. So this is Division 6, as we noted. When you get down there, you have a little discrepancy here with the teams, I think, in the way the power rankings work for them, because you have Salem at number 3, but then at number 9, you have Winthrop, a team that beats Salem. But let's call them even, all right? Let's just call them even, because that's pretty much the way they were. Salem's at 9. Winthrop is 9, rather, I should say. Salem is number 3, as I mentioned. Then you go all the way down from 9, where Winthrop is, to number 14, where Dennis Yarmouth is. And so, that makes some sense. And you look at the St. Mary's team, which is number 11, which we'll get to in just a moment. That seems to fit in. So, Salem with that home field advantage on the power rankings, you would think they're a better team.
Yeah, yeah. And normally what we've seen with these power rankings, especially in football for the last couple of years, it's rare we get an upset. It is rare that upsets happen. Usually the favorites are usually winning the game. So
Yeah.
the trend might continue. But the right below them we have Cardinal Spellman and we have St. Mary's. St. Mary's going back to Cardinal Spellman, who they played
Yeah.
just a few weeks ago and they shut them out 14-0. And I don't know if you've talked to Coach Driscoll yet, but one thing about St. Mary's, they're actually getting healthy. They're getting guys back. Joel Maggs made his season debut last week. Ernie Paneas is set. I believe he's set to return for this postseason game. So a lot of their weapons are coming back on top of the guys who had to fill in, who are playing really well right now. So St. Mary's look like they're getting healthy at the right time and to make another run at it.
Yeah, I like that St. Mary's team I saw a week ago. You're right, absolutely right. This is a nice looking football team right now, and a young football team.
Mm-hmm.
So they're only going to get better. And Belliard, their quarterback, did a
Yeah.
great job. And you mentioned Joel Maggs coming back, two-way performer, each side of the football adds some power and punch to that offense and defense, if you will. So big additions. And Coach Driscoll, I think, actually was pretty pleased with the team and the way they played
Mm-hmm.
1 week ago on that Thursday night.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking with Joel Maggs, he just said the biggest issue was fatigue for him, just getting in shape. But he looked like he didn't miss a beat in that game. He was,
No,
especially
no, he was fun.
defensively, he was flying around, making tackles behind the line of scrimmage, even got some carries. But that only helps them, especially with the presence of Maxwell Parent, the star freshman, who offensively and defensively is just one heck of a player who's a playmaker on each side of the ball.
So potentially, if those two teams, Salem and St. Mary's, win, they'd be facing off against each other next
Mm-hmm.
week. And on the other side of the brackets, two other local teams, Swampscott, a number 12 seed, playing at the number 5 seeded Linfield on Friday night as well at 6:30. So that's D6. So we got some nice local interest in D6 in the area.
Yeah, and I talked to one of the Swampscott assistant coaches. He's pretty confident in their team and what they can do. He feels like they're gonna have a good week of practice going into Linfield. He feels like they have the weapons needed to make the plays for them to win some postseason games. Kip Academy, they close out their season with a loss to Manchester Essex, but if you were at that game, it was a back and forth affair. Kip had their chance to win it, but that was a heck of a game. And those two teams, whenever they get together, it's always a tough it's always a good game between those two. But Kip, and I'm looking at their brackets. I don't see no reason for them to make a deep run again. I don't see no reason. This is a well equipped team for this time of the year. This is one talented football team, and they have so many playmakers on offense. On take Mornell Castro aside, they have other guys who are just capable of making big plays, just like him.
I got to think they probably had an opportunity to grab a lot of points if they could have pulled that win off last week against Manchester Essex, moved up in the seedings a little bit.
Yeah.
But a close loss is just that, a close loss, and so I'm not sure how that impacts them. But they're the number 7 seed there, so that'll be interesting how that plays out. And like I said, I don't think when you get to these divisions, like they're an 8,
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes the power rankings there's a little fluidity here as to the meaning how they stand up, and so. And right now, this KIP team is home, but they're playing a number 10 seed Sutton. So, and that Sutton team, let me see if my rule. There you go. My rule, and again, they're 6-2, so they have a solid record, but they are ranked number 10. KIP 6-2 overall as well. So, but
I feel Kip has for me. Kip has played because they were on the road a lot this season, and they had a lot of tight games on the road, and they always managed to find a way to win. They've managed to make the plays down the stretch, to put together the drive in the final minutes of a game to give them. So they've been battle tested as far as like late game situations and how to handle certain things. So I think, and with what happened to them last year at Gillette, because they felt like they didn't put together a full game. They felt like they played one good half of football. That's why they lost. What happened to them last season at Gillette? I think they really understand the what's ahead of them and what they need to do to win. So I really like this team. This is one of my favorites going into this postseason.
No, I don't disagree with you at all. In fact, that Manchester Essex team that they lost to plays a division up. They're not in 8 like Kip is. They're in 7. They're in the playoffs, albeit the number 15 seed, but with a 5-3 record overall. And that's the same division that has Amesbury, a very tough team in the Cape Ann League as well. Mm-hmm. Small school, obviously, but they're 6-1. They're a very good football program, and they've been very solid the last several years. So they're, I think all those teams, Amesbury, and Manchester Essex, we mentioned, albeit in D7, are good teams, and Kip's in there too, right with them, albeit in there, Kip knowing they're in Division 8.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited for this. Is which games will you be attending?
I actually may not be at one. I should have prepped you on that question because I might be away. But anyways,
gotcha.
But if we were to go to a game, I'm not sure which one I would go to be quite honest with you. I want to see Salem, but a must-see game would see Salem and St. Mary's next week. That'd be a great football game, I think. I'd love to see that one. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
If they win. I'm not jinxing.
Before we get out of here, and lastly, I just want to get your thoughts on the biggest loser in this postseason was Everett. Everett felt they put together the resume for them to get one of those to get in the postseason. The committee felt otherwise. A lot of people felt the committee got it wrong. I feel the committee got it wrong. What is your take on Everett not being in the playoffs? And do you remember when the last time an Everett team was not in the playoffs?
I don't remember when that was, but I'm so old that I can tell you I can remember whenever it was a doormat. I'll be honest with you, a doormat football program. They are no longer a doormat football program. Obviously had some of greatness the last decade or two. But no, I don't. And it's all based on points. So I don't know how. The only thing I can think of is that they don't have a lot of respect for the Greater Boston League, and they don't get any points by beating Malden and Medford and Somerville, for example. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that has hurt Greater Boston League teams in other sports, in the last few years. So but do I think that this Everett team is better than the Leominster team that the Prep is playing this weekend? I would think so. I agree with you, but somehow or other, but I think it really comes down to that schedule. It's not a subjective decision.
Yeah. And my issue was they played too good out of, you could only have so many out of conference games because you have to play the league games, but they did play 2 good non-conference games against Xaverian and BC High. Played BC High tough. Played Xaverian tough. The game came down to, a couple plays here and there. And then they beat a really good BC High team that's ranked pretty high at home. So if I was them, and I just go back, and then I'll go back to last year. It was like last year, this was like the similar situation. We finished 7-1. It was like the same thing. So it's like, what's the difference now from last year and this year that we couldn't get in?
See, I think it's the league. Unfortunately, that's bringing them down. You're right. They're as good as BC High. BC High is the team that the Prep beat last week, but to close out the regular season. But they're right in the middle of that D1, and that's about where they probably belong. They're good. BC High is a good team this year, and so is Everett's not a bad team either. I totally agree with you. So that's the only explanation that I have. And because I've seen it in you've seen it in other sports, in other seasons, you know what I'm saying? With the Greater Boston League. And I'm not saying it's just the Greater Boston League. There are other leagues too, or other sports where you're not pulling a lot of points out of them. Because if you look in the Greater Boston League, who's won this year? Classical has won. Classical's a good football team. And
even Medford was a good football team this year. I think they had 3 teams with a winning record this year.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I think it was Everett, Classical, and Medford.
Yeah, Classical's a good team, but I think if you think about it, if you can't get some points out of your regular season, I'm thinking Classical's, a different division but they're comparable with some other teams that made the playoffs from the area, albeit some different divisions. But that's what, and but I don't know. I just think it's the league. I think there's something like you can't get anything. Maybe I don't know how the points work exactly, but
Yeah.
if you're playing a team that doesn't have any wins, Revere has had a down year this year. That's unusual for Revere to have a down year like they had this year.
Yeah.
And and so they're not getting points. Normally would get a handful of points out of beating Revere, classical, English and so on. But some of these teams are down.
Yeah, might have to figure out a way to maneuver out of a conference and play independent or something like that. I don't know.
I was just thinking the same thing. They at first, when they went into the leagues, they were not a lot. When they joined with the Northeast Conference, they weren't playing football in the league. They agreed to that, and now they may want to jump out themselves just to for the playoff possibilities. I don't know. Let's see what their assessment is. They certainly know the answer to it for sure.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Before we get out of here, please plug in your website, social medias, all that good stuff where you can find.
All right, you got it.
Do you have anybody coming on this week? Are you talking with any coaches this week?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, we got a bunch, but we have Brian St. Pierre, St. John's Prep is up on the website now as we speak. We talked to him. They're playing in their number 1 in D1, St. John's Prep. And, I wanted to talk to them because you've seen them a lot. Mm-hmm. And I've seen them. I saw them one game, but I've watched games on the live stream. But this is a team that has really come together. They've really answered the bell, I think, this year. And they've improved from game to game to game this season. So they're playing their best football right now. So good luck to them. They've done a great job putting together, some things that there were a lot of question marks at the beginning of this year off of last year's state championship team for sure. And they've got a lot of answers. I don't know whether they have all the answers, but they've just got to go out and play the games now. And but they're used to that. So you got to give them a tip of the hat this year for putting it all together. As of course Peabody as well has done a great job this year. But the prep, hosting but we're at MSONESports.com, MSONESports.com. We're on Twitter as well. And obviously we follow you, making sure, your stuff over the weekend and stuff. Yes, and during the week. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you once again.
Stay warm. Oh, I know. We're supposed to have Danny V from the Boston Herald on this week as well. So we're going to have.
That's funny because I was about to. Yeah, I was planning on emailing him too to try to get him on. We'll talk to Danny in a while. I was gonna email.
Well, don't email him. He'll dump us for you right away. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, good guy. We talked to him. We talked to him quite a bit, but we haven't talked to him for a week or two, I think. So we're due. So
all righty. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our high school football games of the week. We'll catch you guys later.
All right.